the different teams within their department, respecting the fact that the different sport coaches might want to do things their own way? How would you unify a department in giving people that advice now here?
So there's something that I like to say when it comes to strength and conditioning. A question I always ask, and it was one of the first questions I asked when I got to Ireland. I said, what does our sport need to be successful, but in playing it, does not develop it? So, for example, does rugby make you stronger in absolute terms? No. I mean, certainly if you're a kid playing any sport, you'll get stronger, but that's because of development, not because of the sport itself. Will playing your sport by its very nature make you faster? Will playing your sport by its nature help you with symmetry, mobility, and all the other underpinning physical characteristics structurally needed, let's say, to make a tackle effectively? The answer for the vast majority of those is no, 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 no. And so if we continue to ask ourselves, what does our sport need but not develop? That clearly starts to give us a structure across medical, nutrition, psych, S&C to build out a program. And also in building out that program, ask ourselves, what data do we need to collect to inform those critical performance areas, both that relate to rugby directly and relate in our world to rugby indirectly, such as a Nordic score or a CMJ or a strength score. It by itself is not going to tell me how good you are on the field, but as a bandwidth, I'm going to know if you're not at a certain threshold, you're going to struggle to be physically capable to deal with the physical demands of the sport. And so as you start to chip away at that, you start to build intelligence. You start to build information. And all of that information then is anchored to your methodology that is meant to use that information to make the player better. And so we kind of went information source by information source, building systems. Sometimes that was purchasing a software. Sometimes that was developing a protocol. Sometimes that was just improving our meetings, right? A system can happen in many different facets. But we went information source by information source. And ultimately, in my role as kind of a hub facilitator, I say that my job is to help people get the right information at the right time, in the right way, at the speed of decision making. And that last piece is the key. Justin, so often in sport, we are working in delay. We are working in retrospect. Okay, I just got done with a 3-month block. Now let me review what we did. Oh my goodness, we didn't get as strong as we needed to. Okay, let's try this new thing and check back again in 3 months. Okay, well, if what you've implemented as an adjustment to your strength program works, happy days. You get to find out in 3 months. We said for us, that's not good enough. We want to build a system that, like gravity on a kid learning to ride a bike, is as instant and instantaneous as humanly possible. And with technology out there nowadays for things like tracking in the weight room and tracking on court or tracking on the field, you can do that. And it's far simpler to do it with one team, let alone scaling it across 5 entities. And so it absolutely can be done. And then from there, you alluded to interdisciplinary teamwork. Your interdisciplinary team needs to have a shared vision. It needs to have a shared goal. It needs to have a shared mental model to understand the interrelationship of how everyone's going to work. But I'll be honest with you, that for me is the final frontier, and it's endless because you can have all the systems and all the tech you want in place, but the power of relationship needs constant feeding, nurturing, and watering. It is an endless endeavor. And so I feel the greatest organizations get all these process procedures. They put the construct, the system, the blueprint in place. But I like this idea of flexibility within blueprint, flexibility within construct. And that flexibility comes through how we as humans interact, problem solve, and deal with the stuff that we can't collect data on. Deal with the stuff that no one piece of information can give us the answer to, where our subject matter expertise and colliding insight generation needs to work together to get us to the next best step. And I'll be honest, even as an organization doing as well as we are outwardly, that's the area that we all agree inwardly is an area of constant growth and nurturing. You cannot stop relating to people. It's not done and dusted like a system, like a document. It takes constant work. And that's what organizations can't forget. It never stops.
For an analogy or a way that I like to phrase your job and your role is you're essentially a translator, no? Like you're making sure that the sport coaches speak strength coach and strength coaches speak sport coach, and then right? Is that does that make sense
absolutely.
when I'm saying it, or is you like, yeah, no, not really?
No, it does, because let's say tomorrow I was drop shipped into an NFL team as the director of performance for that team. The very first thing I'm going to do is sit down with all of our football coaches, and I'm going to understand exactly how we want to play this game at a technical level, what they define as success on the field. And then we are going to reverse engineer that in terms of how we are going to develop that physical asset, physically and mentally, to be prepared for that. And then I'm going to retranslate those efforts, that methodology, in terms of what those coaches are seeing on the field and in the weight room, back to them on how it's going to relate to those success KPIs, key performance indicators that they've defined. And so you're absolutely right. It's a constant translation out and inward. And someone in the type of role I am, or the type of role I'm in at a team level, is very much so at the center of that translatory process.
Yeah, and like I said, like how have you been able to maintain your different touch points and your different relationships? Because, hearing you say that makes me think back to a book I read where it talked about, like, look, you can really only lead 4 to 6 people. Outside of that, you need to have great relationships with them, and then they lead their people and whatnot. How do you go about leading your first team, your most core competent people, and then let that trickle down to their subordinates? And then how do you interact with their subordinates? Because we do have a lot of high performance managers and, assistant athletic directors that listen, because that position's starting to grow here in the States.
So we, very early on, we developed an athletic performance leadership group. In fact, it's been, from a hiring perspective, it's one of the most valuable assets we have when someone joins Irish Rugby, because they know that when they come on board, they're not going to be, so to speak, on an island in their team. And leadership's a lonely place, Justin. Anyone who's in a leadership role knows that. And the higher you rise in any organization, sport, business, or life, the harder it is to get authentic, real, genuine feedback around your performance. And so we have tried to create a system that allows for that as best as possible. And so fortnightly, for my American friends, that's every 2 weeks, our athletic performance leadership group gets on a Zoom call or Teams call. That includes the 4 heads of athletic performance, one from each province. That includes our heads of athletic performance for men's and women's 7s, men's and women's 15s, and then our chief sports scientist and data scientist. We all get on a call every 2 weeks, of which we try every 3 months to have that face-to-face for an all-day powwow and a dinner. And that is the group that is responsible for constantly checking in on our systems, creating a safe forum for people to share issues they might be having with staff, or problem solving that they're having with a coach, or let's say some other colleague, or also share what's been really working within their system. So we have a communication forum that meets frequently enough for us to rapidly problem solve at both system and individual level problems or needed solutions. In doing that, that creates a forum to nurture those relationships, so that they pick up the phone and call each other now of their own accord when they have a question. Hey, Tom, I saw you doing that. You were talking about that thing in the call the other day. Hey, we're struggling with that. How do you think we can get better there? And so that starts to naturally happen. Then when they play each other, they get a coffee before the game begins, or maybe they go out to dinner. And so those relationships organically emerge. Now, you're right, Justin. Each of those heads of athletic performance at the provincial level can have, 4, if not 6 other staff members underneath them. And so they are the trusted go-to conduit by which any information, management, or review occurs to that broader group. But at the same time, I have our heads of the academy and our leads in the pathway. Right? That's kind of for like the high school kids or kids just graduating high school. They meet on a monthly basis. And as it just so happens, I'm bringing all of them in next week, and we're spending an entire day together. to look at our under 20 squad, to look at our development protocol, to look at how our data science and our information systems are working in our developmental athletes and making sure that there's no blind spots going on. And so while I work with our leadership group most often, as you say, I'm still creating space at a much lesser frequency to engage at every single level. And the beauty is, on top of that, we have a high-performance center, which I call home, and that high-performance center has residency of our 7s national teams and our 15s and our under 20s. So any and every time that there's a national assembly of players coming together, I'm already in situ right there. And then all of that is wrapped around that I'm out in each of those provinces as best I can every 4 to 6 weeks outside of busy times of the year. So on top of that, I'm going physically face-to-face, and I'm just in the environment, and oftentimes without an agenda, just to be amongst it, to chat, to help, and get stuck in on the day. So you take all of those, plus any professional development we do as a group, and the amount of touch points, directly and indirectly, are abundant.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.